In this video, we're going to talk about variables, and you'll have the slides and then the video that you're watching, which is attached to the walkthrough right here. Again, you can open up the slides, and there's a little link here that will open that up on its own. And the nice thing about these code blocks, if you would like to experiment with any of this in IntelliJ, you can simply highlight it and right-click, copy, and then go ahead and paste that into IntelliJ if you'd like to play around with anything here in the module. All right, so that's where we're at, and I'm going to go ahead and open up IntelliJ. And IntelliJ here has left off with our first project that we created, so we're going to go ahead and set up a new folder. So what I'd like to do here, just to keep us organized, because Module 1 has a lot of really mini practice projects, I'm going to set up an entirely new project here. So I'm going to go File, New Project, and I'm just going to call this, it's going to be a Gradle project, Java 11. I'm just going to call this Module 1, and then hit Finish. So and then do this window. So we're going to do a lot of mini projects here, and we'll put them within this same project structure, and we just make new classes for everything that we do. And this way you'll have these all in one spot, and it will also be a nice way to just reference if you're working on something else or like a project where you need to reference some code samples. They'll all be in one place. So we're going to go ahead and let this build. That one build a little quicker, probably because I had just built one of these a few minutes ago. And we'll go ahead and look at our source main Java folder here. And here we are in Module 1. So let's go ahead and right-click and make a new class, which I'm going to call Variables Demo. Variables Demo. And that'll be a class I'm going to hit enter. All right, so again, we'll do main, enter. And so we'll write all of our code here in the main method. And so what I'm going to start with are integers. And let's go ahead and do the area of a rectangle, for instance. So let's think of some, I'm going to write a comment here, 2 forward slashes. And we'll just do some instructions. Calculate the area of a rectangle. All right. So we'll name these variables with good meaning. So let's do length and width. And let's say our length is 5. And let's say our width is 3. Right, rectangles, a little bit longer than they are wide. And then we'll calculate area. And we'll do a formula, length, the asterisk, which is shift 8 times width. And notice that we're ending everything with a semicolon. So depending on what theme you're using in IntelliJ, we have some keywords that are being highlighted here. And you can see that int is a keyword to represent an integer. Length and width have been declared, and they have been assigned a value. And then the area calculation has been made, but notice that area is grayed out right now, so I can hover over that and see what's going on. And it's just saying that that variable is never used. So we need to actually display to the user some final result here. So if we did a print line statement with this out, enter, we are going to do something called string concatenation. Which basically means we are adding a variable to the end of a string, right? Using the plus sign. So the plus sign can be used for a few different meanings here in our code. It could be used for addition if we were doing 5 plus 3. but in this case, it's being used for concatenation. So how does our system know to do that? Well, if it sees a string here, then it knows it's going to do concatenation versus if it sees a variable or a value. So we can go ahead and run this project, and hopefully we see 15. The area of the rectangle is 15. Very nice. So if we wanted to basically do this exact same project, I'm going to do Control-C. I'm going to hit Enter a couple of times, Control-V, and I'm going to paste it. Let's do doubles here. Doubles are going to handle decimal places. I always think D for double, D for decimal. So let's do base, do triangle here, right? And we'll do height. And then I think put a comment here. Calculate the area of a triangle. So I want to name this triangle area equals 1/2 of times base times height. The area of the triangle is, and then we'll put in triangle area here. Okay, now we can run this one and we'll take a look at what happens. So we get the area of the rectangle at 15 and the area of the triangle at 7.5. So we're able to handle decimal values with a double. Something else that we did here, as we went along, first we had an area variable, and then we knew that we needed to get a little bit more specific, and so we named this one triangle area. So what's bothering me about my code right now is that this area variable is a little generic. So let's refactor this. Sometimes when there's a need, you don't see it until a little bit later. So when we were just working with the rectangle, area was fine. Now that we're doing two different area calculations, it would be better to redefine this variable, which shows up now on line 7 and 10 for me. So if I right click and I go to refactor, rename, and I want to rename all occurrences of this, well, I've got to be, not all occurrences, I'm going to rename the code occurrences, not the ones that are in my string. So let's do triangle area here. Or I'm sorry, rectangle area. And then hit enter, and it should rename it in both of those spots. So now I've got specific area variables that we're handling. And since we did refactor, let's go ahead and run our code again just to make sure that we're still getting the expected results. All right, and we are. All right, so those are integers and doubles. Let's take a look. Stick inside of my main method here. I'm going to hit enter a couple more times. Let's take a look at Boolean values. Let's say we have a variable called on. If on is true, then our Boolean off would have to be false. Which would be not on. I wonder if not would work in that case. It's not. Anyways, just showing you these, and then you can what we'll do here is we'll do on we'll concatenate those variables. That's fine. Let's just give me a warning. We're doing this for a demo. On is true, off is false. We haven't done any logic with those to switch them in any way, which we are going to get into once we work on conditionals. And then finally, let's look at strings. Go ahead and run this again, and that should greet me with my variable for my name. So the strings have a little bit more power than the rest of these variables. So everything that we see here, ints, doubles, and booleans, these are called primitive values, which just means that there's not much we can do with them other than, store information, basically store their value that's been assigned to them. Strings are a little bit more powerful. Strings are objects which belong to a class. Okay, we see the capital letter here, and we talked about capital letters signifying class. So if I hover over string, we can get a nice description here of what's happening with this class, and you can kind of scroll down and do a lot of reading. Something else that we are going to get into in a separate lesson, strings have methods attached to them, and if I do name dot, I can see all these different tools that I have available when it comes to working with a name. So for example, one of my favorites would be, let's see if it's here, okay, here we go, name dot to uppercase. I think that based on that naming convention, you could pretty much guess what that's doing. Name dot to lowercase, what do you think would happen in that scenario? Name dot substring, and so these would be sort of nice method definitions that are describing exactly what you could do with the name. So for example, if we did name dot substring, let's assign string nickname equals name dot substring, and let's start at position 0 and end at position 1 and see what we get there. And we'll do hello nickname. Oops, forgot my plus. Well, again, we're going to get into a lot more on strings, but just to show you one of those. All right, so that's going to give me the letter A. Okay, so it says start at position 0, stop at position 1. Well, let's start at position 0 and stop at position 2. And that's going to give me out. All right, and so we always start the first index position, or the first character in our string is what we call position 0. And we go from there. So if my string is 4 characters long, it would be from positions 0 to 3 in this case. And so we'll get into a lot more on strings later, but for now, that's a nice little demo for you there. And so I'll kind of scroll through this code slowly so that you can pause the video and take a look at anything that you'd like to practice. And from here, I think you're ready to start looking into the slides or looking into the documentation. Copy paste some of those code blocks, experiment with them, see what you can work on in the variables section.